So it turns out that a user can just enter anything in the form, right? So they can type anything. They actually, radio buttons only let them click or not click, and sliders limit, what values they can have. But in a lot of places, they can really enter everything. And so it's important to validate the data. In fact, it becomes a real security issue to validate the data, especially on the server side. So there's a lot of server-side validation that goes on. But on the client side, so that's when the user's entering it, you can do some form validation really early on and make sure that the forms, the required fields are filled out, and there's some other kinds of validation you can do before it's ever sent to the server. So the client side validation just minimizes the errors that can be forwarded to the server. So we're going to do a few of that server or client-side validation. We're not going to get into server-side validation at all. So right now I'm at the very top of the form, right by the opening form tag, and we're going to start by making 2 fields required. We're going to require that the name field, so here's the name field, is required. And the way that we do that is we go actually into the input element, and here's that input tag, and with the different attributes one after another. And we're going to add an attribute called required. And this one doesn't need a value. You're just saying this is required. So you add that there and save it. And now if you go back to that form and we try to submit the survey without that in there, it'll come up and it'll say, please fill out this field. And notice it didn't submit the survey. It didn't go to the JavaScript, or it didn't go onto the server. So we just made that required. And as soon as we put something in there, then we can submit it. And our JavaScript file says, yep, it got submitted. But because we put that required, something has to be there. The other one we want to make required is the email. So if you scroll down till you find the email, here's the input element for the email, and we can add the required attribute here too. Okay, so now that one's required as well. So we refresh. Now when we try to submit, it does the name. We enter something in the name, and we click again, and it says, oh, you've got to fill out this field as well. So then we fill something out there, and then, this is an interesting form of validation. And this validation is, here I've entered something, and if I keep going, it will allow me to submit it, right? And that's using the required attribute, and we can add that to any element that we want to. This other one is a data type validation. So here I'm entering something in there in the email field, right? But now when I click, it comes up and said, ooh, that's not really an email because it doesn't have an @ sign in it. And so this is a data type validation, and this happens automatically when you choose certain types. So this particular one is the mail type, right? We picked the type was email, and when you do that, then it validates automatically that it has an @ sign in it. So you get that data type of validation as well. There's another kind of validation that we can add, and that is using a pattern, a regular expression. And we can do this on the zip code. So let's go to the zip. It's up. Okay, so there's the zip code. And what we can do is we can add a pattern. And what this will do is it'll compare what the user enters to this regular expression. And if it passes that pattern, then it will go ahead and get submitted. If it doesn't, it'll put up one of those signs that says, hey, you don't have it right. Now, those regular expressions are included under the text folder of the starter code. So if you go in there, you'll see it. And here's the regular expression for the zip code. And you want to copy that with no extra spaces and put that right there in those quotes. And that will be the pattern for a zip code. We're going to do, you see the other one here is for a phone number, regular expression, so we'll make a copy of that. Now notice we're not learning how to create regular expressions, just how to use them. And so we'll go down to the phone, and we'll put a pattern there. And put that there. Okay, so now let's go ahead. Let's refresh. And we know we have to put a name, so we'll put a name. And we know we have to put an email with an @ sign in there. john@yahoo.com. So we've got that, and now we click it. Now notice it didn't stop it. So these ended up both being empty. So the postal code and the phone number we didn't submit. So it'll be fine even with nothing. It won't compare that pattern until something's in. So let's go ahead and add an invalid postal code. So let's just put 2 numbers, which is not enough. And we put that in there. It says, please match the requested format. And so it's not following the pattern. It's expecting 5 digits on the zip code, and then it works. Or it has the pattern where you can do a hyphen and 4 more. Let's just try 3 and see what happens. Okay, doesn't match the pattern. But if we put a 4th one, then it matches the pattern and it will accept it. And there you see it being submitted. Okay, same with the phone number. If there's nothing there, it's okay. But if we start adding values, there's different patterns that'll work. Let's try that one with a letter and see if it'll work. Nope, it won't. So if we get rid of that letter and we have 7 numeric digits, then it works. And you can do it also with zip code, the area code in front of it, and that's submitted. But if you make a mistake and you don't get the pattern right, then it won't be submitted. So that's 3 ways that we can do client-side validation, right? 1, we can add the required attribute, and then it makes sure that they have to fill that out before they submit it. So the required attribute. 2, there are some data types that have a built-in pattern, and like the email has it. And so just by putting it as that particular type, it'll validate that it has an @ sign in it. And then 3, that you can use a regular expression, use the pattern attribute and a regular expression to determine what you're expecting in that input.